Good evening. My name is Amy Littlefield, and I'm the History Department Chair at Commonwealth Academy in Alexandria, Virginia. And I'm an instructor for World History 1 and 2 and U.S. Government. And as this was my first year to teach government, I decided to do my study on those students. Here is my most favorite picture of my two classes of government students. Last fall, when we took our field trip to the Capitol and got to see Congress in session. And I much rather would show you this picture than the last one I have of them because they were on my screen. I fortunately finished my research before COVID hit, so I was able to collect all of my data. At the end of my research, I conducted a survey with them, and this is a quote from one of my students about my course. I enjoyed it because I think it is important to know what is going on in the world, especially when you're old enough to vote. So my project is called Engaging Seniors in Government. Problems that I saw, first of all, a senior loss of interest in working hard, especially in the second semester, also known as senioritis. That the fact that students need to know that civic participation is a right and a privilege, and that these seniors were voting in their first election in the fall of 2020, and that they needed to know and know the importance of engagement in the subject of government. My population, 20 students in two 12th grade U.S. government classes, and I teach at the same school as SORA, which is a school for students with organizational, attention, or learning differences. My question, how can I maximize the civic engagement of my 12th grade U.S. government students upon their graduation in time to vote in the 2020 election? And my hypothesis was that teachers' design of class activities, along with collaboration from student ideas, will create an engaging atmosphere of learning, whereby students will continue to actively participate and seek knowledge about the governmental process in the United States. So I looked at, in my research, practices that particularly involved engagement in government classes for my study. And first I found project-based learning, which of course for years I have incorporated that into my teaching, but this is investigation in response to authentic problems and challenges. Next, I looked at a program called Engagement First. Basically with this, students begin project work and role play before lectures and readings, and this helps develop content interest. I also looked at active learning techniques specifically dealing with government classes, and these included role plays, political simulations, debates about political issues, mock elections, and peer-to-peer discussions. Then I looked into choice, and I have particular interest in choice because that's what my dissertation dealt with. And this is student involvement in their learning, in the decision-making process, and this helps increase their autonomy. And finally, I looked at open classroom climate. When you have a safe environment in your classroom where students can feel free to discuss their issues on current events and their opinions in political issues and not feel criticized, then that is a place where they will learn and grow. So I began by conducting a class conference. This was held in order to gather information and feedback from my students regarding class activities. After my research, would I find that students agree? What new activities would students come up with on a topic? Sample questions were, what type of activities do you enjoy in class? If you were to design a class activity, what would it look like? What would be your dream activity for government this year? Next, I developed student self-report inventories to measure student engagement. The first type were short inventories after an engaging lesson plan, and the second were conducted at the end of each unit with a final inventory at the end of data collection. After analysis and surveys and conference data, I found that my research correlated with student ideas. They liked projects, especially group projects, debates, role plays, current events discussions, and solving real-world conflicts. In addition, they come up with some other ideas that I incorporated into lesson plans. These included art and drawing projects, video projects, and mock trial on a current issue or event. So here are 5 sample activities that I did over the year. First, how a bill becomes a law. Students were provided with choices to demonstrate their understanding of how a bill becomes a law, and they had choices of groups, recently enacted legislation, so they had to have something that had been signed into law within the past 2 years, and their type of final project. My students created a game, website, comic strip, videos, and a podcast. And students reported that the project was interesting, contributed to their understanding, and that they enjoyed the wide variety of choices. So here is on the left, my students playing one of the games that was developed. And so this again was on a piece of legislation that had been signed into law. On the right, one of my students created a Pixton cartoon, and he's explaining that to the class. Here on the left, this group of students is putting together their product. And then on the right, this is just a still shot of a Powtoon video that my student created, but I thought you would be interested in the name of the bill that was signed into law last fall, called S1379, the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness and Advancing Innovation Act of 2019. Then last, this is some still shots of another video my students created. These 2 students drew and narrated the Improving Access to Maternity Care Act. So my data on these, the first question was, I like that I could choose the product. You can see that that is heavily skewed to the right. And the second question here is, how much did the project contribute to your understanding of how a bill becomes a law? Next, I'd like to discuss the class debate we had on the Electoral College. We conducted several debates over the years, but this is the one I chose to spotlight. It was created by student request. They found it engaging. They reported increases in learning about the Electoral College, and they said they wanted to do another debate on a topic of interest. So you can see the debate was engaging and I enjoyed it, that this is skewed to the right. Next, I want to discuss a 6-week collaborative projects we did on Google Sites. We developed a website on the presidential candidates and the issues. This was in February, right at the beginning time of the presidential primaries. So we had a lot of candidates at the time. And what my students did is we conducted a survey and they chose 6 issues that they wanted to focus upon. These were education, healthcare, economy, energy and environment, gun control, and immigration. This survey provided them with ownership over the project because these were their issues. And I'm pleased to report that we had 100% participation in this project. So each week we had a different issue and students had different candidates each time, and they never had the same candidate twice. And they said that it increased their understanding of the positions on the candidates. Of course, I'm trying to educate them about the process, but also the issues. And the website provided an interesting and engaging format for them. So I'm going to show you one of the websites that they created. This is the homepage. And as you can see, the issues are all here across the top. And for instance, here's education. We'll look at Michael Bennett. And you can see the student created a summary of his education policy and an image, just to show you another one for comparison. Here's Mike Bloomberg on healthcare. Here is his healthcare plan. The next activity I'd like to share with you are on campaign simulations. We had 2 class simulations to understand how campaigns work and simulate the decision-making process. So for each campaign, you would have a candidate, you would have someone keeping track of the budget, planning the candidate's schedule, deciding on a message, and getting the candidate ready for a debate. In all classes had high rates of engagement in the process and increased understanding of how campaigns work. And they said they enjoyed the group collaboration and debate portion in the simulations. So here on the left is a picture of two of my presidential candidates right before their debate. And as you can see on my data, this is skewed highly to the right as they all enjoyed simulating this campaign. And finally, my last project I'd like to talk about is creating a campaign advertisement. They created a video campaign for a real presidential candidate. They said it increased their self-understanding of what it means to have a campaign message. And they had high ratings on making a video, applying what they learned about elections, and being creative. So you can see here, I enjoyed the project and also how much did it contribute to your understanding. Again, both of these skewed to the right. Unfortunately, I do not have time to show you any of these commercials, but I'll just show you as a teaser. This is the Bernie Sanders one that, and all of these videos did a great job, including the issues of that the candidate had been focusing on. So at the end, I had feedback on these two units. The most interesting things to them were election campaigns, the election process, and political parties. They had increased understanding of how the electoral process works and reported they were more likely to vote after learning about the election process, which of course is one of my primary reasons for doing this entire project. So these are my last two graphs to show you. I'm more likely to vote, and I understand more about the process. And I got 4 themes out of this project. The first, choice leads to engagement. Choice provides autonomy, empowerment of learning, and ownership of learning. And a quote from one of my students, creative projects allow us to interpret something ourselves, which shows our understanding. Second, active learning techniques lead to engagement. And a quote, it helped me visualize how the processes worked and experience it for myself. Third, open classroom climate leads to engagement. It, the class discussion, helped me understand the election process better. And fourth, project-based learning leads to engagement. And my quote, it made it so that instead of just talking about a topic, we could actually experience it. So as I said, I had a final survey for my project, and I just wanted to give you a couple of the questions and some student quotes on that. What is the most important thing you learned in government this year? How to be an informed voter. Second, what would you tell next year's students about government class? Pay attention. This stuff is worth knowing about. And things that could be problematic with my study, of course, there's always bias from student self-reports, and there could have been a desire to please the teacher. Third, I did obviously have a small sample size. And of course, if I wanted to follow up on this data, the best way to do so would be with a longitudinal study to see if this interest held up over time. So what have I learned? First, empowering students with a voice regarding their learning makes a monumental difference, both for me as a teacher and for their engagement in government class. Student ownership of their learning led to increased engagement. Making students feel a part of the process has made them feel that we, teacher and students, are a team. And all data indicates that these students are more likely to vote and participate in civic activities in the future. So my call to action for educators, empower your students by listening to their ideas, giving them choices, and creating a safe environment. Student ownership of learning increases engagement. And active learning increases participation and commitment of students in civic responsibility. My call to action for leaders and policymakers, first, civic education must be more actively promoted in designing curriculum throughout the educational spectrum. Teacher professional development in civic education is paramount to creating active citizens in classrooms. And last, provide teachers time to share engaging activities that promote civic engagement of students. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to any questions later.